Everyone, welcome to the Fairfield Board of Education of March 14th, 2023. So exciting to see everyone here tonight. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and with us this evening is Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson, and Mrs. Kelly, and we are joined by our superintendent and, of course, Mr. Testani. If everyone could rise and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, first up on our agenda this evening is our student reports. So welcome up. Hi, are you alone today? Oh, hi. All right, well, you're up.
Good evening, I'm Mary Ryan from Fairfield Ward High School. This Wednesday at 8 a.m., the PTA is hosting their monthly virtual meeting. This meeting will focus on a scholarship presentation by the director of our College and Career Center. Additionally, tonight we are hosting the Townwide Orchestra Festival at 7 o'clock p.m., and the FWHS Band is hosting their annual concert this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It would be great if you could make any of these. The orchestra and choir departments also hosted their March concerts last week. They did wonderfully, and we are so proud of their hard work. Ward's dance team won New England's this past Saturday. Congratulations to this great team. Best Buddies Club attended the Best Buddies Friendship Ball, which connects Best Buddy chapters from across Connecticut this past weekend as well. Our boys basketball team defeated Stanford last night 59-52 to earn them a spot in the state semifinals this Wednesday versus Staples. There will be a fan bus to take fans to Trumbull for this game. The juniors are taking the Connecticut SAT next Wednesday and will be pre-registering this Thursday during an extended homeroom. We want to wish our music departments as well a safe and fun and successful trip to Disney this last weekend in March. And finally, we want to wish a very good luck to the Ludlow girls basketball team who are competing in the state championship on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for our student member this evening from board members? Mr. Peterson.
I just want to add, I guess this is the right point. On Friday, I was privileged to go see the townwide a cappella concert at Ludlow Middle School. And this is the first year since the pandemic's kind of back to normal and in full force. Some other members of the board were there. I had people participating, and it was a wonderful experience. One of my favorite concerts, close second to Carol On and to Candlelight.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Anyone else? Okay, well, as usual, you're welcome to stay with us or enjoy some of the festivities or, as normal, go on with your evening. But thank you very much for being here this evening. Thank you. Okay, next up on our agenda is any public comment. Of anyone who has any comments this evening on any of our agenda items, you may come forward at this time.
So, Mrs. Jacobson, you don't have to follow Mrs. Vitale's footsteps and cut me off after 3 minutes. I think I can do it. Let's see.
I have a very large crowd here, Mr.
Okay,
Scanlon.
I'm taking all three. I'm telling you right now. Here we go. Good evening. Frank Sahagian, 20 Chelsea Street. Tonight you'll be getting an update and information about the status and future changes to the middle school block schedule that was implemented this current school year. As most of you know, I'm a retired 8th grade social studies teacher from Woods and keep in touch with my former colleagues. Both teachers and administration agree that the new schedule with a 7-day rotation isn't working. In what you're about to hear, some of the following challenges have been addressed and some have been only mitigated at best. Student performance is noticeably down with respect to turning in assignments and assessments. Student absences make catching up very difficult. Although staff was added for more math and reading intervention, the current schedule isn't working effectively. Teachers are generally behind in their respective curriculum. With the longer class time, teachers have been guided to incorporate movement breaks. While important, it cuts down on active instruction and learning unless the movement is part of the lesson. The current schedule for 7th graders puts lunch in the middle of a class Those students lose time for transitioning back and forth. The music lesson schedule is difficult for students to manage, and as a result, attendance rates are very low. Some teachers have days without a prep period in the current schedule. Field trips, assemblies, common in middle school, are a major inconvenience. Missing one period in the schedule where periods are dropped wreaks havoc in learning and planning. And this is not a comprehensive list, but I only have 3 minutes. In speaking with my former colleagues, they mentioned to me that administration listened and understood there were problems and changes needed to be made. They went on to say that the changes you will hear tonight were a result of a collaborative process with staff. However, and this is the big however, and the reason why I'm here tonight, there was no discussion or possibility of considering and comparing what you're about to hear tonight to going back to the former schedule. I may be wrong, but I don't think so after talking to a number of teachers. A majority think it's problematic in middle school not to see their students every day. Given the myriad of problems, this so-called collaborative process, lest I be misunderstood, not at all to minimize the time, effort, and work of these incredible teachers you'll hear from tonight, I don't understand how administration and central office did not explore staff sentiment in not continuing with the block schedule. I think this is a demonstration of irresponsible leadership on the part of the superintendent and central office. In my former life in business, in leading a division of a public company, when we proposed major change, it was absolutely critical to get buy-in from stakeholders or the changes were destined to fail. I understand that it's not in the board's purview to make this policy. However, it is in the board's responsibility to make sure that the district is being led with strong leadership practices. Understandably, teachers will not stand before you and make this case. But during Q&A tonight, I hope at least one of you asked the teachers before you, not of their personal opinions, that would put them on the spot, but simply if there was any query of the staff comparing what you're about to hear to doing away with the block schedule. I find it incomprehensible and impossible to make any meaningful assessment of the forthcoming presentation and not know the answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bob Smoller, President of the Fairfield Education Association. Notwithstanding what Mr. Sahagian just said, I'm just here to basically thank the Kia Parish and the middle school administrative team for the very collaborative process that we just went through in creating the middle school block schedule. It is true that we were giving you a set of parameters to work around, but that being the case, I feel that this is probably one of the best environments we've been in as far as working together, addressing issues, solving problems, and coming up with what we feel is the best possible schedule given the parameters that we had to work with. So I applaud them for willing to work so collaboratively with the teachers, and we'll see, I guess, next year how well this schedule works, but at least I think everybody's put their best foot forward in trying to put something together that we have high hopes for. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. Moving on, presentations. First presentation this evening is Recognition of Excellence, CABE Communication Award, presented by Janice Coopy. Sorry if I got your name wrong. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. Yeah, you can go and sit, and you just have to hold the button down while you speak into the microphone. Either position is fine. Welcome. Just press the button. You can sit if you want.
Okay, hold it while, okay.
Yeah, hold it while you talk. Sorry.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Superintendent Stani and members of the Fairfield Board of Education. My name is Janice Cupie, and I'm here on behalf of CABE to recognize the efforts of the Fairfield Public Schools and present you with these awards. In order to receive the Bonnie B. Carney Award of Excellence for Educational Communications, entries must meet all the following criteria. First is the general criteria, which includes clarity of message, image, and consistency. Second, the specific guidelines of readability, editing, graphics, type, format, presentation, design, and value of expenditure. I'm very happy to present Fairfield with these awards of excellence for educational communication for district budget, Board of Education proposed budget 2022 to 2023, and computer-generated project, the 2022 to 2027 district improvement plan. The Spotlight entry was a monthly newsletter that showcased highlights and happenings around the district to inform parents and the community of news and awards district-wide. The district improvement plan entry focused on improving learning achievement for all students and recommit to the district mission and vision of a graduate. CABE has been honoring school districts with the Award of Excellence for Educational Communication since 1975. In 2016, the award was renamed in honor of longtime CABE staff member Bonnie B. Carney in recognition of her 47 years of dedication to education focused on communications. With this award, CABE's goal is to identify and honor the hardworking people in school districts for their continuing effort to communicate effectively. Congratulations.
Congrats, and I'll just say a quick thank you to all of the staff members who contributed to the efforts in earning these awards. So, team effort, and thank you very much for all your contributions. Next, recognition of excellence is our student athlete and team FCAC champion. Don't know if anyone here is for that, but I will invite at this point our two athletic directors, Mr. Todd Parness from Ludlow and Miss Gina DiGiacomo from Ord to come up and kick off the big events.
Hello, thank you for having us tonight. We have a lot of people here, so I think the best way to do this is I'll announce the coaches and the awards, and then we'll have that particular team come up with the coach, and the coach can announce all the team members that are here. Does that work? With a photo, yes. That's better, thank you. All right, so first up, girls basketball, why don't you come on up here? Coach Sarah Kinsley. Congratulations, girls. The girls basketball team was the FCAC East Division regular season champions. They were...
Hey, Todd, can we just have them come into the middle here, and
Come
then
on in
you
here,
can get
girls.
their picture?
Into the... Right in here. They were the FCAC tournament champions. They also won the IABO Board 9, which is our officials group, Team Sportsmanship Award. Coach Kinsley was the FCAC Coach of the Year, and Madison Roman was the Player of the Year in the FCAC, and they are also going to be competing in the state championship at Mohegan Sun this weekend. Time and date to be determined. So Coach Kinsley will announce the team members.
Okay. This is Madison Roman, Kate Simador, Gigi Foucher, Taylor Mehta, Lily Gervasi, Paige Kilbride, Hayden McBean, Morgan McGowan, Rory Cudsey, Caitlin Finnegan, Phoebe Shostak, Caroline Kiersey, Amelia Kiersey, Callie Summers, and that's Coach Jason Perzicki.
Congratulations, ladies. Yep. All right, thank you, ladies. You can go out if you want. Yeah. You can go out that way if you want. Or you could stay. It's up to you. It's up to you. Congrats, ladies. All right, next up, great job, is Ludlow Cheer head coach Morgan Carolyn. Come on up, team. The cheer team was FCAC co-ed champions this year and also placed second at the CIC state championship. And they will be competing at the New England championship this weekend.
Hi, my name's Morgan Carolyn. This is Coach Jackie Imbrogno. We have Jake Cahill, Kate Rogerio, Addie Kane, Noella Meehan, Katie Leonardo, Susanna Sharon, Izzy Furr, Deanna DeRozier, Olivia Fusco, Madeline Unith, and Lily Dow.
Thank you. Just wait for a picture. Thank you, Chair. Okay, next up, we have members of the boys indoor track team. Come on, boys. Coach Nulf could not be here tonight. But we have Tyler Bartlett right in front here, who won the Class L state champion in the 1,000 meter this year. And then Jake Aguilar, Ryder Gattenby, Samuel Keller, and Tyler Bartlett was also part of the sprint medley relay, who also won the Class L state championship this year. Congratulations, boys. Thank you, boys. From the girls indoor track team, unfortunately, Coach McCloskey and Tia Stapleton could not be here tonight, but I do want to recognize both of them. Tia won the FCAC championship in the long jump, and she also won the CIC Class L state championship in the long jump this year. Last up for just Ludlow, we also have a co-op that we'll get to after, but the Ludlow wrestling team, head coach Jeremy Kelly. Come on up, boys. The team was the FCAC East regular season division champions. And Dylan Sherman was the FCAC champion in the 132-pound weight class. And Danelle Young, who could not be here tonight, he's in the concert, was the FCAC champion in the 152-pound and also the Class L state champion. So congratulations. Just announce who they are.
Our team captains are here today. Joey Toro, great year, finished his career off with 25 wins as a senior. Mark Roble, unfortunately, season-ending injury, was a defending FCAC finalist and L state place winner last year, hurt the team. We're going to miss you, Mark. And Dylan Sherman, who was our first FCAC champ since 2016 last year. He's now a two-time FCAC champ, L state finalist, state open place winner, and then the man, the myth, the legend, Skip Garofalo, our assistant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, boys. All right, and that's it for Ludlow. We could do ski. All right, so we have a few co-op teams throughout the winter season. So we'd like to announce girls co-op ski team made up of students from both Ward and Ludlow with Coach Q. Come on up, representing their captains here. The ski team was state champions. They have 11 state championships. I'm sorry, let me say that again. They have 11 state championships in the last 12 years. So pretty impressive. Coach Q?
Yes, and leading us this year were our two captains, Kara Lorian and Matilda Nichols.
Congratulations, that's quite an accomplishment over the last 12 years. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Now we're going to recognize the Ward Winter Student Athletes. First, I just want to recognize Jack Plesser, who got the FCAC Player of the Year. The boys basketball team is practicing, preparing for the semifinals game tomorrow night at West Hill, but Jack was planning on coming until practice. Next up, we have our wrestling team. If we could start heading up this way. There is a lot of accomplishments in this group of young men. Coach, do you want me to do them, or do you want to go through and do them? All right, we have Coach Jason Shaughnessy here. We have the captains, Nemo Petway, Jack Dean, Matt Pastor. The team are the FCAC champions this year, and we've only been able to clinch that twice out of the last 36 years. Danbury's won it 34 times. So this is quite an accomplishment to wrestle that away from Danbury. No pun intended. Yeah. We're excited to have Owen Scheinman here tonight, who had surgery last night. We didn't think he was going to be here with us tonight. So Owen is an FCAC champion and individual CIAC Class LL state champion. Owen, you can't raise your hand. Nemo Petway, also an individual FCAC champion. Nemo, step forward. We have Dominic Spadaro, who is a CIAC Class LL state champion and individual state open champion. And individual CIAC Class LL state champion, Nemo Petway. Placed third in the state open and fifth in New England championships.
Thanks everyone for taking the time to honor us. We really appreciate it. Also here is James Dean. He was third in the FCACs. At the end, Captain Matt Pastor was an FCAC place winner, and Jack Dean was an FCAC finalist. Dominic, Nemo, and Scheinman were all FCAC and all state. And again, we appreciate you guys taking the time out for us. Thank you very much.
Guys, you take a picture? Okay, next up, we would like to honor our dance team. So our dance team is the CIAC state champions for hip hop, and also just clinched New England championship for hip hop as well. I'm going to let our morning announcement speaker, Danny, announce all her teammates.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us today. I have Allie Emmerich, Desi Kalamidis, Allie Marcus, Allie Gordon, Ashita Kumar, Phoebe Yoder, Kylie Coleridge, Adira Balan, Colby Northrop, Gabby Welch, Serena Cronick, Jackie Alley, and myself, Danny Ferguson.
While they're taking the photo, the winter student athletes, it's so specific on some of their accomplishments. So just for those lay folks, it's like the conference championship, a state championship, and then like New England's. So all these student athletes that we're celebrating today from both Ward and Ludlow, they've not only dominated in our conference, they've dominated in our state, and they've gone on to dominate in New England's. So I just wanted to, I'm rattling this off, but it may not mean. If you have not seen these girls dance, you've definitely missed out. But you can follow them on Instagram. Okay. You guys are good. Okay, next up is our gymnastics team. It's just gotten like 10 degrees cooler in here now that we've cleared out 60 kids. It's snowing. I did have a coaches meeting tonight. Okay, so our gymnastics team, also very accomplished throughout the FCAC, the state, and New England. So I just, again, want to point that out. I'm going to introduce Emma C. Johnson. She's actually going to introduce her teammates as our coach couldn't be here tonight. And Kaya Vadis is also here. This team won the FCAC champions back-to-back in 2022 and 2023. Emma Johnson is individual FCAC all-around champion and all-around state open champion 3 years in a row, 21, 22, and 23. Are you stepping forward, Emma, a little bit? Yeah, there we go. Okay. The team finished third at the Connecticut State Open, and they just qualified to compete. Well, they just, once we submitted this, they competed at the State Opens, and they went on to New England's. Again, qualifying as a team is a huge accomplishment, and I'm going to pass it over to Emma to introduce her teammates. Or are you doing it?
Okay. Yes, I'm Kaya Vadis, one of the captains. This is Lena Alvatek. Emma C. Johnson, another captain, Bailey Klein, Kara Dawson, and Lainey Bliss.
We are competing with the music festival tonight, so we lost a few team members. Okay, next up we have our boys and girls indoor tracks. Why don't you guys just come up together? Coaches couldn't be here tonight due to weather, proximity to home, and coaching outdoor track now. But our coaches are Tim Foster and Justin Ottavio. The boys indoor track team is the FCAC East Division champions. Joey Capola placed first in the FCACs for the long jump. Give a little step, don't jump it out. In FCAC first place sprint medley team, we have Scott Francis, Otto O'Brien, who couldn't be here tonight. All right, these guys are all in the music, so they're not here. Parker Broderick set a new school record and an FCAC first place with 3 minutes, 41 seconds a mile. I mean, it's crazy. Like a mile. Parker also is the FCAC champion in the 1,000-meter time of 2 minutes, 32 seconds, sets a new school record. He is also the CIAC State's first place champion in the 1,600. He is also the Connecticut State Open first place champion for 1,600 with his time of 4 minutes and 18 seconds, which also breaks and sets a new school record. The New England Championship, Parker placed second overall in the 1 mile. With a time of 4 minutes, 15 seconds, which also sets a new school record. Our girls' indoor track, equally as impressive. Meg has been on a great run. She placed FCAC first place finish in the high jump. And these guys went on to states in New England and also placed, but for the sake of the size of this room, we stuck with first place finishers this evening. But the CIAC Class XXL state champion for shot put is Zen Blanks. Meg also finished in the high jump 5th overall in the New England Championship. The winter accomplishments are super specific to weight classes, events. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to recognize the effort that these student athletes put in, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
I just want to, before we leave, I want to recognize Gina and Todd for all the work they do, because they put in tireless hours making sure that every event goes off without a hitch. So great job.
And I'll throw in a thanks to all of our coaches, assistant coaches, and of course to all of our family members with all the extra driving, cheering, and laundry, and all that goes into the success of all of our teams. So congratulations to everyone again. We look forward to watching you in the rest of the postseason for those who are continuing on, and looking forward to our spring athletes getting started. So kudos and congratulations, everyone. Well done. Thank you. Go Fairfield. If the board will not mind, we have two of our student reports who actually have joined us this evening. So if it would be okay with everyone, I'm going to allow them to give us their report for Ludlow. Thank you so much. So good to see you guys. Thank you. Hi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time. I do apologize for our tardiness. We weren't aware that it would start at 7 o'clock and not 7:30. It sounds like you heard a lot about our Falcons accomplishing in the sports. We just want to reiterate that they're leaving a very positive Falcon footprint in our community. And one state championship you may not have heard of is the mock trial team. They just made it to the state championship for the first time since we were a co-ed team with Ward in 2008. This is a huge deal, and they're going to be contesting their case at the Connecticut Supreme Court in front of Connecticut Supreme Court justices, which many professional lawyers don't even do in their entire career. We really do encourage all members of the community to show their support, even though it is Ludlow and not Ward. We also had Victoria Beniston, a sophomore in the choir department, who was selected to perform in the American Choral Directors Association National Honors Choir, which is the highest level of choir accomplishment in the country for high schools. I'd also like to highlight the Ludlow Culinary Department and our food provider, Whitson's. They're working with the Red Tomato Food Hub on a farm-to-table produce partnership. The students are going to be making a fresh lunch with food from Rogers Orchard to serve to the town officials and Board of Ed members. I'm really excited for you guys because I know that when these guys cook, they mean business. And in terms of art awards, which may not have been highlighted earlier, we'd like to congratulate Owen Daly and Cosette Butler. They're both seniors for winning the Connecticut Association of Schools Scholar Art Awards. Owen won in the music category and Cosette won in the art category.
Hi, thank you so much for your patience. We did come down with an awful case of the miscommunications, the uglier cousin of measles. Yes, so for special highlights, we have the Library of Art. Ludlow's foundational 3D art students partnered with Fairfield Public Library to feature 19 sculptures during a scavenger hunt. And just to preface, this is the library, like the larger Fairfield District Library, not the one in our school. And then for business, we have Ludlow's advertising class prepared to present to a local business a totally age-drift and fit club for their final exams in January, which means they're going to have to present a business proposal or a marketing proposal to a real business, which is an awesome opportunity. Yeah, we're really glad for the businesses to give the students the opportunity to get some real-world experience. We also have Our Turn to Serve. Ludlow's Our Turn to Serve team has raised nearly $4,000 for the Wounded Warrior Project, a mission to honor and empower our soldiers and those who were impacted by the events of 9/11. For hockey, we have Ludlow's hockey team. Never mind, they are this year's runners for FCIACs. But I think you guys already know that since it wasn't mentioned here. I thought with the awards and all that. And the Ludlow senior, Connor Zavery, has been awarded the FCIAC Goalie of the Year award. So very exciting. He might go to Ward, but he might play for Ward, but he is our Falcon by day. So we're proud of that. And then we also have cheer. Well, you guys already know, but it placed second in the co-ed state championship this year, which is very exciting because historically, well, from my memory, since I'm such a veteran, been here for a long time, we did not usually excel as much in cheer, and this year's team has really, really, blown the competition out of the water. Then we also have Partners for Literacy. Ludlow students have been working to collect adult bestseller books in good shape to donate to People's First Connecticut, a nonprofit in Bridgeport that offers meaningful work and life coaching to those recovering from drug and alcohol-related issues. Also, to mention, we do have a lot of accomplishments, in all areas of interests and, music, art, business, all that. And I do think that a big part of that is how much we're allowed to express ourselves in the school environment. I personally, I'm sure we have a dress code, but if you go to our school, you will see that a very, very large number of people express themselves very, very, how do I say it? You can look at them and their interests, their passions, very creative. They're allowed to dress how they want and to dress in the colors that they want, to dress however excitingly or demure they want to. Personally, as somebody who expresses themselves in the way that they dress, that's an awesome opportunity, and I do feel that it contributes to how much we succeed in a lot of areas, especially our debate team. We're allowed to talk and argue, so I think that's awesome.
Just another thank you to the board for being flexible in the timings.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for staying and coming and giving your report in absolutely any time. So as always, you're welcome to stay if you'd like, or you can go on for your evening, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. And congratulations on all that's been going on in school, and look forward to the rest of the semester. Thank you.
At this time, we will call up Dr. Parrish and also the middle school leadership team to present the block schedule that will be operating next school year at our middle schools. I want to preface before I bring over the microphone so they can speak that and acknowledge the hard work and the collaboration that did go into this effort. I will say, as someone who's been involved in scheduling for over 20 years of my career, scheduled at both the elementary, middle, and scheduled a large comprehensive high school for almost a decade. Block schedules are nothing new. They've been in existence for 20 years or plus in schools all across the country. I would hate to think that we would go back to an antiquated system of running a 7-period day, given the fact that we know all the benefits and the innovative teaching and learning that can happen in the block. So I will turn this over to Dr. Parrish and the team to present what we believe is an excellent schedule for our students and our teachers moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. Zakia Parrish, Deputy Superintendent, and I'm actually going to just start out by thanking our team for a number of very collaborative, as Bob Smoller mentioned earlier, meetings in which we were able to fully flush out what we are going to present to you tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to representatives from our three middle schools, Roger Ludlow, Tomlinson, and Fairfield Woods.
Thank you, Dr. Parrish. If I could, just for time's sake, if the team is okay with it, I'd just like to introduce everyone. We've got Michelle Taddy from Tomlinson Middle School, Tom Riley from Roger Ludlow Middle, Tara Malecki from Fairfield Woods, Jody Sachs from Tomlinson, Meg Tiley, principal at Roger Ludlow Middle School, Colleen Bannock. I saw you raise your hand, Colleen, just like a student raising your hand. And John Goodison is our middle school special education program coordinator. So we hope to not keep you too long, but we wanted to give you an update on our middle school schedule. And I want to echo a statement that was said earlier, and I want to thank the middle school teachers and my fellow administrators. For those of you that haven't experienced the middle level, I know most of you have or are about to, Mr. Asa, you're coming my way. The middle level is all about teaming, and this revision was certainly a collaborative experience for all. As Mr. Testani alluded to, there is great difficulty in creating what we all see as the perfect schedule. If you've worked in a school, you've experienced what I call the yeah buts. You know, oh, we've got a great schedule, yeah, but we want this, yeah, but we want that. We have worked historically in Fairfield with someone named Ken Greenberg. Some of us have worked with a gentleman named Elliot Marenblum, also known as both are schedule experts. And the first thing they say to you is, for everything you want, you're going to need to sacrifice something. So this middle school level committee was charged with developing a block schedule or revising our block schedule with increased instructional time and finding time for interventions and extensions without losing anything in our existing schedule, a nearly impossible task. I'm not one that reads to you. I know you can see the PowerPoint and you have you've seen these guiding principles before, and we have maintained them throughout our process, both when we did our original block schedule and throughout our revision. So when you hear about parameters, the parameters were our guiding principles. Just a bit of quick background. You may recall that we had originally proposed a win period or what I need period in the original block schedule proposal last year. You may recall that we paused that win period to allow students and staff to make the transition to our 7-drop-2 schedule for this 22-23 school year. As you've heard, there have been some difficulties and glitches that we've worked through, but we decided that we really needed to work collaboratively with the FEA, our teachers, and the middle level administrators to make the necessary revisions in our current schedule that we feel better supports all students. You're going to see in a follow-up slide you'll see a follow-up slide with actual student schedules. Please note that we have shifted in our new revision from a 7-drop-2 schedule to one that works in a 5-day framework. Teachers and students will think in terms of a Monday through Friday versus an A day, B day, G day. We currently have an A through G day. One comment heard through one of our student surveys, or really echoed across our student surveys, was the schedule needs to be a 5-day schedule so I can memorize my schedule and so I don't have to worry about what letter day it is. And another was, I wish it was a 5-day cycle rather than 7, so it would only be the weekdays. We also found with teachers that lesson plans and designs were in 3 very different places depending on the day in our current schedule. We had feedback from both students and staff regarding the confusion around the day, and oftentimes hearing, did we do this already? Much more time was spent on the actual coordination of the day or organization of the unit delivery. One student noted, I sort out whatever day it is in homeroom. A student sample comment in this survey was the elongated classes have helped my understanding of the content, but dropping of the classes gets confusing at times. So we met as a team throughout this past winter. We looked at our current schedule, and in living with the yeah buts and working together, we have reallocated existing time within our current schedule, that's 8:10 to 2:50, to create a flex time during 2 days of the week. This time has been created while maintaining all the opportunities that we currently offer to our students. Additionally, those students that may need interventions or additional supports may have the opportunity to take a world language and may not miss music opportunities as they have in the past. We believe that our revised schedule will provide established blocks for student support and interventions. We are planning by team, crew, and community to provide supports, extensions, and other opportunities for all students. We have made a reduction in each block from 65 minutes to 57 minutes. We'll come back to that. Our current schedule and revised schedule time allocations are going to be highlighted in the next couple slides. So I spoke to a lot of this, but it sort of breaks it up in a grid. And again, I'm not one to read to you, but I want to talk through it. Our revisions on this grid highlight the benefits and the why we made this change. You'll see in that first slot that homeroom remains, but it is now 10 minutes. We met with parent groups in the past regarding our block schedule change, and we've talked to students, and all parties felt that having that home base and maintaining that checkpoint was important. You will also see, and it's a housekeeping place to take attendance, and again, a home base. Each block is 57 minutes. Again, back to our guiding principles, we wanted to maintain that longer instructional block. I already spoke to the schedule running on a Monday through Friday, where 3 days drop 1 period and 2 days drop 2 periods. That's going to increase, and we'll speak to this, it will increase our frequency of class meetings. Our days of the week are locked. Monday schedule is always a Monday, remains consistent and predictable. And as I said earlier, we've reallocated that flex time to maximize our support and possible extensions. Everyone always asks the question about snow days. That will not have an impact on this new schedule.
These next 2 slides are a comparison between our current block schedule and the revised block schedule. So this slide will look at minutes in comparison, and the next one will deal with frequency, so you can see those side by side. I also don't want to read the chart to you, but just to take you through it briefly, the first 2 rows are for 5-day classes, the core classes, etc. And then the next 2 are PE, then we go into music, flex time, and finally transitions. So the first row there is for per 5 days and then per year, and it follows that same pattern. The chart really illustrates how the minutes were reallocated to maximize the time in the school day and allow for that increase in the flex time, which was a primary consideration because we needed, when we chose to revise the block, that was one of the main reasons we were doing it. And finally, what may not be very clear from looking at the chart but worth noting is the new revised block maintains the ratio of music to PE. So that was a 60-40 ratio before. It is close to that now, and the new schedule maintains that. The next slide. This chart looks at frequency, so how often the classes meet, and again follows that same pattern, first 5-day classes per 5 days and then per year. And you're looking at PE and music. You can see that there is an increase in the frequency of the meeting times in the revised block for all areas, which was a huge consideration for this schedule. And as Meg was saying, students and teachers were saying, we want to meet more regularly, and so that was, meet more regularly and have less drop days. So one of the benefits is the frequency.
So the big question always becomes, well, what happens during flex time? So again, don't want to read to you, but I want to highlight some things here, and we've listed them sort of from these are clusters of examples of activities and opportunities for all of our students to engage in. Keep in mind that this flex time can be utilized for different needs throughout the year. Students are not locked into set activities for the year. They have the opportunity to get what they need in that moment in time. You can note that some range from specific one-on-one support, small group, whole class, whole grade, and independent opportunities. We currently have our math resource teachers or interventionists and our language arts specialists, interventionists. They currently push in and pull out to provide support. Again, that flex time will give them more time to target more kids. Our scientifically research-based intervention team can do the same thing. The district currently has, in our work with Mr. Testani, working with some programs around social and emotional learning lessons. We're currently looking at a program called Move This World that would provide opportunities during this time for a SEL program to be delivered with fidelity. We currently have developmental counseling lessons, but we pull kids out to do that, so this would be an opportunity. Obviously, counseling groups and individual counseling, student success planning, time around organizational executive functioning groups, study skills, individual works. As we do now, check-ins with team, community crews, teachers, make-up assessments, time for gifted and talented, the thought of creating some, using our learning centers in a different way, along with related services. We spoke about some independent work, as in the ALEX program, STAR, IXL, Khan Academy, Ed Puzzles, possibility for independent reading. Mrs. Kelly, I could not resist movement opportunities. We are a sisterhood in that one. So ongoing access to our library media center. We have in here music lessons. This does not solve the forever music lesson problem, but it would alleviate in some way an additional time, possibly 2 slots per flex period, for kids to have the opportunity to take music lessons, makeup lessons, and things like that. More makeup lessons than lessons, but it's an opportunity. The thought around possible club meetings and, as someone alluded to earlier, currently special assemblies, although we welcome them and they are so enriching to our kids, they can be challenging and cut into instructional time. This would be an opportunity for special assemblies during that flex period. We had lots of debate as a group over this slide. People saw it in very different ways. I don't want you to see this as a locked schedule for a student. This is just a hypothetical scenario for several different students. So student A may have different interventions, a small group reading, and have an SEL lesson, ranging from student G, who may be doing some passion work, independent reading, do a math extension online, and have an SEL lesson. You'll see SEL lesson throughout that flow. Again, this is not a set schedule. It is one that provides students what they need and when they need it. Mr. Testani happened to visit with me early on in his time here. He was at Ludlow during our current flex period, which is significantly shorter, and I describe it tastefully as organized chaos, and it is organized and worth doing. I would like to pass on to our 3 teachers, and I want to comment on the collaborative front. When we brainstormed, the team was larger than this. We drilled down to the 3 expert teachers to my left who've got a real scheduling head, and I really want to give credit to the teachers for their brainstorming, their mindset on student first, and what will be best for student, school, whole community. And it is, in fact, the teachers that created the schedule that is before you.
So I'll just reiterate that this really was a great process from the teachers' end as well. We felt that we really had a voice at the table, and it was just a great way to problem solve a lot of the things that that would come up with different schedules that we came up with. We did have many different teachers coming up with many different possibilities. Ultimately, the schedule in front of you is what we landed on. It is a 5-day rotation where the days are locked in. On certain days, 1 block is dropped. On other days, 2 are dropped. So this is just a sample of a grade 6 schedule. The 10-minute homeroom at the beginning of every day. On Mondays, the period 1 is dropped, and the ones highlighted in blue are potentially what could be the UA periods for that grade. So you can see on Tuesday, 2 and 3 are both dropped to make room for the flex period later in the day. Wednesday, only 1 period is dropped, period 4. On Thursday, period 5 is dropped. On Friday, both 6 and 7 are dropped, again to make room for a flex period. One of the really nice things about this schedule is that the drops are in order. And so in terms of the kind of process of doing the lessons in order, for a teacher's perspective, on Monday, you'll teach the first lesson of, say, a unit to periods 2, 3, 4, and 7, and the next morning to your period 1 class. And then you can move on to the next lesson. That kind of solves one of the problems we're having with this year's schedule, where teachers are teaching the first lesson someday, maybe to the first class they teach lesson 1, then to the next class they're teaching lesson 2 because they already taught them lesson 1 yesterday, and the following day they might be teaching 3 different lessons. That happens once in a while. So that's one of the things we wanted to really solve in this schedule. The next slide just has the grade 7. Again, same idea, the drops are the same. The UAs are highlighted there, what could potentially be the UAs for the grade 7 schedule. The flex times are at different times for each grade. This will help alleviate how many students may need to see an interventionist at a time, because right now with all of the students having homeroom for 25 minutes at the same time, the interventionist can only meet with so many kids at once. So by having the grades have the flex time spread out at different times on Tuesdays and on Fridays, it gives them more possibilities for scheduling more students. And then the final slide, same idea, but with a possible 8th grade schedule.
Yeah, I'm good. So it's important for folks to know that in the new schedule, similar to this iteration at this time last year, that students will continue to receive their special education and related services. There's nothing that this schedule limits in the way of what services we can provide, nor is there any limitations on the service time. Students will continue to receive the appropriate amount of special education related services that the PPT decides is appropriate for that student. And in fact, there may be more flexibility in the ability to provide services without competing with other non-special education services, which is a nice opportunity in the planning of the PPT and the IEP. This schedule does not in any way change access to accommodations or modifications to a student's IEP. It's solely the impact, although of any change, would only be around service frequency and duration and time. But again, they're schedule shifts, not shifts that are based off of the student need. So to that end, there may be some changes to the IEP based off of the new schedule, because that is the environment that all students will be in. It is important for folks to know that no change to the IEP can be made, even with a schedule change, without either an amendment with their signed consent and or a PPT meeting. Similar to how we did last year, we will, the district will offer amendments and or PPTs in collaboration with parents so that everybody's comfortable and on board with the changes. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. The changes really will be, in many cases, around the amount of times and certainly the 57-minute time frame as well, which would be a logistical change that needs to be reflected on the IEP.
That concludes our presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Board members have questions? Mrs. Gerber?
Yeah, hi, thanks so much for the presentation. This was really helpful. One question I had, since we're now changing it so that it's, the schedule's baked into each day. So there are obviously some days that are, there isn't school more than others. Like Monday, for instance, next year there are going to be 7 Mondays. And that's not including the weeks like, Christmas break and April break where all of the days are off, but like there's 7 Mondays, 4 Fridays, and then also with early dismissal too, just wondering how that works because Tuesday is really heavy with that. So just curious how that's going to work.
Yes, this was a major point of discussion as well. So we decided that we can roughly model what the high school does when they have a situation where one of their numbered days is disproportionately affected by snow days or other things like that. So we have the ability towards the end of a marking period or really at any point that we feel it's necessary to change what we're going to run that day to help offset inequities that occurred because of those days. So we can, for instance, we can say, hey, everybody, we know it's Wednesday, but we're going to run a Tuesday schedule because X, Y, Z. And we have the ability in Infinite Campus to change the attendance for that day so it's accurate. So we feel confident that we can address that, although it was a challenge, like Meg said. We couldn't have everything. The pros far outweighed the cons.
But totally understand that. I guess just right out of the gate with Mondays, the first Monday, school starts on a Tuesday. Then you have Labor Day, and then later that month you have, I don't know if it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, but one of the Jewish holidays. So right there, there are only going to be 2 Mondays, but there are going to be 5 of every other day, and so I could just see that. Especially since that's right at the beginning of the year, that would kind of make things difficult, which I don't want this to be, because I would like this to be successful. So I'm a little concerned that just having it start that way would be a problem.
Yeah, we're not starting off on a particularly good year in terms of Mondays getting extra hit, because they get hit already. So, but it's good for us to keep that in mind going forward, because maybe what we can do is organize it ahead of time to account for that. But ultimately, running a Monday through Friday schedule has so many more benefits, and it's better for kids. They don't want to think about A-Day, B-Day, and Monday and Tuesday as being separate. So it is a concern and a consideration, and one that we're really keeping a close eye on.
And then I guess the question, so how does this work with early dismissal days? Are the periods just all shortened, or do you
just like it does now? So we have early dismissal days now. We adjusted the schedule so that the exact same periods meet, and they meet for a shorter amount of time.
Okay, thanks. And then one other question, so I know that when you were initially going through this whole process, changing the schedule, you did look to see what other districts were doing. Are there other districts that do this 5-day a week? And if so, did you have a chance to see how they worked?
I have talked to Westport, New Canaan, Greenwich, Western Middle School in Greenwich. I'm trying to think of who else. Darien. We've talked to a handful. Some have moved to a block, not one similar to this. They've got different elements. They may have one additional period. And some are, quite frankly, Westport is one of them, saying, let us know how it goes, and we'll call you back. They're very interested in the block, but they're running into the same what-ifs that we ran into.
Okay, but I guess so there aren't any districts that have the 5-day-a-week schedule?
None that we encountered with this 5-day-a-week, 57-minute block schedule. Yeah, good point. We have more offerings. We're one of the few that still offers family consumer science, and yeah, we wanted to maintain those. And some of the schools we looked at, world language and music is an option, and we didn't want to make that an option.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Thank you. A couple of concerns. Obviously, the fairly sizable drop in instructional time. And granted, I don't know if the plan is that you're phasing out the movement breaks or if that's still a part of it. But if you're saying that this year's schedule already resulted in teachers reporting difficulty meeting the curriculum demands, then how does this improve that?
Yeah. I don't think every teacher is reporting that. I know I teach 8th grade math. I already did movement breaks all the time. I mean, even in the old 46-minute blocks, you never lecture to anyone for 46 minutes. So, it basically said if I used to do 3 different activities and have little breaks in between where they get up and, maybe get ready for the next thing, or maybe an activity where they're visiting students at different tables in the room to, compare answers and talk about how they did the problem. Now it's just planning for 4 of those 15-minute different activities to do.
Okay, but that doesn't quite answer my question.
So the decrease in instructional time is, again, sort of going back to Meg's point from earlier. It's a relatively small decrease, so it's a 2% decrease, and we have an increase in the frequency of meeting times. So again, every pro has a con, et cetera. And I think that one of the other things to keep in mind is that because of the way that the flex time is structured, it will complement instructional time in a way that will free teachers up. They're not going to be setting a student up over here to make up that test. They can conference, they can, with students who are coming to talk to them for extra help. SEL lessons are a big part of what our teachers do. We are going to be implementing SEL lessons during the flex time. Doesn't mean they won't do it in the classroom, but I think it'll eat up less. And to Tom's point, I don't see in my school that teachers are behind on the curriculum. They're struggling to coordinate it because it's so syncopated, but I don't see them being behind.
Sure, Mrs. Kelly.
Do we know what that comparable number was pre-block schedule? Sorry,
I have a follow-up too.
It's fine if we can just get it later if you don't have it.
No, I want.
Thank you. So the pre-block, the old, I put it in my footnotes, old, is the frequency or the minutes. So do you want me to read them down? Would that help? They're in the same structure.
I was interested in the overall instructional time, but.
So the old schedule had 230 minutes of instructional time per 5 days. Yep. So it's comparable. It actually sits right in the middle of the current block and the revised. The PE minutes are similar. Again, 92. So a little bit in the middle, but definitely between the two. Music minutes were 138, and you can see that compares. Yep. We have 143, and the flex time is an increase, and again, that's one of our goals. There's also a 4-minute decrease in the transition times. It's modest, but it's there. So we still see the revised block schedule as an improvement overall over the 5-day schedule, the previous one before the block.
Mrs. Max Kelly, if you don't mind, I have a quick follow-up on those numbers. The 8299, that translates into 138 hours, but that can't be right. That has to be times a certain number, right? Because that wouldn't be 900 hours of instruction a year. So in terms of the minimum statutorily. So is that times 5 or across times what?
That's for each particular class.
Okay, so times what? Times 5, times 6?
Times 6.
Times 6.
It would be the 5 academics and the 1 UA, so not including PE and
so
music.
times 6. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, so again, just knowing one of your guiding principles was increased instructional time. So ultimately, this one has the fewest number of instructional minutes of the 3, but I recognize what you're saying, that there's the trade-off. So I'm recognizing that. The main concern I have is that of any level of schooling to have, I can't remember what Mrs. Tyler called it, the organized chaos, what that flex time looks like. I don't understand what it looks like. I mean, that is just I don't get what our children are doing. I understand all of those are needs. That's not my question. Everything on that list, I can see a child would be benefiting from this. But I know one of our concerns had been back with the WIN block was how are you doing the scheduling? How are we making sure that this is allocated evenly, that all staff members are, no one's getting disproportionately affected by child supervision duties, et cetera. Can you give us an example in a couple of weeks? I don't know what would be a good sample, but a couple of weeks, which would therefore have 4 flex blocks, what are the children doing?
Sometimes I can stick my foot in my mouth and using the word organized chaos is something.
I was already thinking it.
I
so.
say it in my head, so apologies if it really, it's something you need to live at the middle level. Our teachers and our FEA group, we are committed to meet as liaisons and as teaching teams and educational crews to talk monthly about what's going to be happening with students during that flex time. What is the need? What are the groupings? Where do we need to put kids? We know the schedule can work, but we haven't played out, will the art teacher be free during a flex period? Would the PE teacher be available to take groups? We haven't played that out, but it will play out. So to give you an exact schedule, we gave you a scenario. I can let Ms. Bannock add to this.
So I think what you're asking, Ms. Maxon-Canelli, is, if we just take Woods, right, 750 students running wild all over the building. And I can assure you that's not what it's going to look like any more than it normally looks like that in a regular middle school day. But the benefit of the design here is that each flex period is at a grade level. So, and off the, out of the chute, you're only dealing with 1/3 of the building. Then we have a real benefit of the way that we've been allowed to be staffed to be in teams. So at Woods, it's teams, crews, and communities at Tomlinson, but same concept, right, of those 4 core staff that are consistently working together. So if I'm a student who may not need math intervention or reading intervention or a learning center, or I'm not being taken for a music makeup lesson, all of which happens already, my team is going to get together once a month and say, let's call it week 1, week 2 of the month, and week 3, week 4. In week 1, we're going to make sure that our students on our team know they have the opportunity to go to social studies extra help on Tuesday, math extra help on Friday. We're going to work it out with our staff. We're going to try and get a partner teacher from another area in their room to assist. And we're still having discussions around our staff around the best way to flex that staff. Do we want to have both partners in the room at the same time? Do we want to have them switch off so it allows for more collaborative time with staff? Either way, the students would be more familiar with those 2 staff members because they would consistently be there. The other thing is, too, and I'm not sure that we said this, but I'd like to share it now, is that in utilizing our 25-minute homeroom right now, a lot of these pieces are happening right now. We do more in that 25 minutes than you could even imagine. Students are going to math assistants, reading assistants, learning center, making up a music lesson, checking in with their PE teacher. I messed up this math test. I need to redo it. I need to have a conference with the student because they were having a tough day yesterday. All of those things are happening now in 25 minutes. And I can appreciate sitting where you sit and not living that with us every day.
If I could interrupt,
yes.
there's one thing that's already different, and that's actually one of my concerns,
Yeah.
is that homeroom has a home base.
Yes.
You will report to homeroom.
This would be the same, and I apologize.
So all of the flexes are returning to homerooms?
Yes, so we're going to utilize.
That would be a good thing to include.
I'm sorry, Jen, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I meant to say that first, it didn't come out first. Yes,
Yes.
so there will be a home base. If I am partners with Meg, it's room A135 every time. Whether it's Ms. Tiley, whether it's Mrs. Bannock, the kids go to one spot, they know exactly where to go, and will have the ability to know where they're going ahead of time.
That changes a lot to hear that.
It's a great question.
Okay.
It's a great question. You're right, we didn't say it.
Know if you want to add something?
I'd be happy to. First, as a parent in the district, I'd like to thank you all for your service. So thank you. But I wanted to say that they would come back to homeroom. As a homeroom teacher right now, I envision it in sort of 2 blocks. And not only would we meet monthly to discuss this, but our teams meet weekly, which, by the way, is a side benefit of this schedule. More team meetings, more guidance meetings, which I think we can all agree is, much needed. So as a team, we can tweak the offerings to the kids on a weekly basis as needed. Do these students need extra help? Should we be doing some study skills right now? Should we be doing some executive functioning right now? Are we all going to stay today? My administrators can correct me here, but are we all going to stay today because we're doing an SEL lesson that we want all of our students to benefit from? I don't think our students would ever see this many offerings. We're just providing to you the kinds of things that we're brainstorming.
It literally changes everything to know that they're returning to a home. I was picturing flex time starts, go. And so trying to picture out how you were scheduling that time and accounting for the attendance and the presence of each child was what I was missing. So thank you very much.
If I could just add in, Tomlinson is actually piloting a little bit of this flex time during Homeroom Now. We have established Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays to be focused on reading, and Tuesday, Thursdays to be focused on math practice. So we have tried to structure our homeroom a little bit more as opposed to the free-for-all, and it is working out very well while the kids are getting intervention. But again, because homeroom is no longer going to be at the same time for all 3 grade levels, our support staff is going to have way more opportunities to reach way more students and to benefit for all of us.
I have a follow-up to that. On the flex time sample activities, who decides where the students go? I know it was envisioned as what I need, but it sounds to me it's what you think they need.
The quick answer is yes. The adults will
No
assist.
choice involved in this scenario.
I would say if the student comes in and says, I really didn't understand last night's math homework, and the team teachers have decided that's a day when students can go to one of the 4 team homerooms, not all over the building, but one of the 4 team homerooms to get assistance, then the student would be voicing some opinion in where they might go. But if I need math assistance and I consistently have my group with Mrs. Formato on Tuesdays during the first half of Flex, that's where I'm going. I know I'm going there. I'm going to go there every time. Yes. So going to be a lot more adult-driven than student-driven.
I just want to add, we had also talked about, since the communities or crews or teams can plan this together, the 4 teachers can say, okay, in my room, I'm going to be doing executive functioning skills, study skills. In your room, you're going to be allowing kids to independently read. So they can start at their home base, and then they can actually move to one of the other classrooms in that cluster, and that can be where some of the choice comes in.
In addition, we meet with our SRBI coordinators. Thank you for approving those positions for all 3 schools. That is where we determine when a student needs to go to one of our specific intervention groups. So again, we meet monthly with that person, weekly with our teams, and if a student needs a specific intervention to be scheduled for them, we will do that during those meetings.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing I have a question on is the student support flex time per week here on the chart says 164 minutes. However, in the sample schedules we received, I see 2 block schedules of 57 minutes each, equating to 114 minutes. So help me understand where I'm missing 50 minutes.
The 10 minutes of homeroom each day.
Oh, so that's counting in the flex time. You're counting homeroom as part of the flex time.
Yes, because it will still provide 10 minutes of a check-in, which is really kind of a game changer for a lot of students who just need a check-in with a teacher. Some students see their learning center teacher. Some students will go and get the homework that they missed.
I'm not arguing it. I just was wondering where I was missing the 50 minutes in the schedule. That's all. Okay. Anyone else have? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Guernsey. Sorry.
Thank you so much for this presentation, for all of the thought that went into this new schedule. I think the 5-day weekday rotation is just really smart, and having a middle schooler, I can only imagine how much easier that would make it on our students and also our staff. So thank you for your consideration with that. It's just fantastic. I have a lot of similar questions. Mostly my concerns are around the flex period, just thinking about the students that aren't receiving these interventions and not wanting to picture them just like on Khan Academy or reading or, whatever that kind of independent work is. That's a concern of mine. And to your point about the piloting exercise, I wondered, before we implemented this year's schedule, we went through a formal pilot program. So is that something that you're planning for spring so that you can practice the implementation of this?
I wouldn't even call it a debate point. The teaching team and admin team met. The primary purpose of our pilot last year was to see if the current schedule could work and could function, and we had done some professional development with teachers around teaching in a 65-minute block. We wanted to do trial runs and get the teachers, not that they don't already, but dipping their toe in the longer instructional block. We're reducing actually to 57 minutes. Our teaching teams are very comfortable in teaching in the longer instructional block. We felt strongly that doing what would need to be a 10-day rotation, even a 5-day rotation, this would be incredibly disruptive to the current schedule, and between delivering our curriculum and assessments that are upcoming in the spring, we didn't feel it was warranted.
Thank you.
Mr. Issa?
Yeah, just really quick, and Ms. Tiley knows a lot of this has gone over my head until tonight, but this was very helpful in trying to understand the block schedule, as I will, I have one more year before we get into this. But so you had mentioned the scheduling being difficult, and we're different than other districts. So just to be clear, so the world language and music, while they are a stumbling block in this process, not saying that we shouldn't have it or anything, but is that what you were saying was?
No, we will maintain all of the current programs that we have. World language, nothing will change in that area. What I was saying is some of the schools that we looked at, I'm thinking Shelton, I didn't even have that on my list. We went to some of the schools that have implemented a block schedule, but in those schedules, world language and music are an option for students.
Okay, so
it will not be an option for us. We will offer the same complement of activities and academics that we do
I guess
now.
my question is, would it, and I'm not advocating for anything here, but would it have been easier without those requirements?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And part of our guiding principles is to maintain our middle level offerings.
And then the last question I have, I guess this is more for the teaching staff on the committee. So one, I was thrilled to hear about how this dynamic group came together, and from Mr. Smoller about the support and how the central office and staff and administration is working well together. But for the teaching staff, it was said here in public comment tonight that it was made to sound like there was a large number of staff that may prefer to go back to a pre-block schedule, and I'm curious if that's something that you heard or was talked about.
So as a group, we've met multiple times. We had representatives from Tomlinson, Woods, and Roger Ludlow Middle School. We met in this room, exactly where you're seated. We met at Ludlow, again, multiple times. We looked at many schedules from many different schools. We came up with our own ideas. There were a few that were vetted out. Some teachers did create a schedule that involved all 7 periods every single day, with the homeroom staggered as an option. But we were given direction by Dr. Parrish through Mr. Testani that we were not looking to go backwards into every class every day 42 minutes. The reason we made the initial change to block is because of all the research regarding longer periods and the benefits of students having more time than 42 minutes a day.
I'll also add that some teachers do think that seeing their students every day in shorter blocks is preferable. Others like seeing them for the longer blocks. Certain subject areas, the longer blocks work better. In science, they're able to do a full lab in one period instead of over 2 different days. The art classes, tech ed classes, they're really able to get into their project work because setup and cleanup takes so much time. So in the old schedule, they only had maybe 20 minutes to actually get their work in. So there are, some teachers definitely prefer it, some not so much. I would say I was very concerned with not seeing my students every day as a math teacher. I know math and foreign language, we get very concerned about that. I do think it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be, and the fact that we're going to be going to 4 out of every 5 days instead of 5 out of every 7, I think that's really just an improvement over the current schedule.
I agree with everything that was said, but I would also add that, as I'm sure you know, we're never going to get all the teachers to agree. I was a person who was particularly concerned with the changing time frame, also not seeing my students every day. And where I've come to through all of this, kind of seeing the pros and cons, being so much more intimately involved with it, is that I think excellent teaching, whether you're doing it in 45 minutes or 57 minutes or 65 minutes, is what our children need.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just one quick follow-up. How will parents be informed? Like, are you going to have a spring, here's what we're doing next year kind of meeting wrapped into a PTA meeting, or how will the parents be told this?
So we didn't want to really put things out there yet until we had met with this group. So now that we have done this piece, our thought would be the incoming 6th grade students and their, incoming parents and students. We have a parent information night that's always scheduled every year. So they'll learn about that change as they come to that. I know we are planning on doing some version of that or some kind of meeting opportunity or explanatory piece for our current parents as a choice. You know, some folks, I'm just thinking about my 8th grade parents, you know, thanks a lot, Colleen, but I'm all set. Like, I'm going to the high school. It really would be for our 6th and 7th grade students. And yes, I envision us offering some kind of an explanatory session for those folks. We could even maybe tape it and make it available for families because they can't all make it in a single session. Go ahead.
I would just add, all 3 of our schools have monthly PTA meetings, and we tend to feature certain things. Ms. Gerber's coming to Ludlow Middle. Thank you for that, tomorrow night. So we have certain highlights every month, and this would be one of our offerings. And I think recording it is a great idea.
Mrs. Kelly?
Hi, just one quick question about the crews not having, like, I know there's some crews that are on a full crew, it's a half a crew. Does that affect the implementation of this schedule?
No.
Simple, okay. And to, I did want to reiterate the going to a 5-day schedule. I know the organized chaos at my own breakfast table is, what day is it? What day is it? What day is it? What are we dropping? What are we dropping? So from that perspective, I thank you. And then also, if I'm reading this correctly, and I think you said it, it doesn't look like any periods are going to be cut in half anymore for lunch, which I will also say thank you for, and I will just leave it at that. So thank you.
Mrs. Vitale.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I agree, I like the switch to the 5-day schedule just for what day is it? And from just some of the feedback that we heard from teachers and from families, that there was a lot of confusion of kids just remembering the dropping. So thank you for that work. I was wondering if you had any discussion about math and world language. Did you ever go through an iteration where you were having those 2 subjects in particular meeting every day, maybe for a shortened period? Have you looked at any data to show that this change is adversely affecting student performance in those 2 areas, being that they seem to be coming up as 2 subject areas that students may benefit by seeing their teacher and having daily instruction as opposed to some other subjects?
I'm looking to the group, but no, we did not look at specific data.
We didn't look at data. I did, some of us did look at possible schedules where some, like classes such as math and world language, would be shorter, like 46 minutes, and then meet every day, whereas other classes could be longer. But it was too difficult to try to schedule.
Thank you. And you mentioned you took some survey of students. Have you taken any survey of parents of just how the schedule has working for them and what they're seeing at home?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of some parent comments that I must be thinking of somewhere else. I'm like, I read your last year. Sorry, I was thinking of after the pilot. I know I remembered hearing parent comments.
And I just asked, just to Ms. Kelly's point about just what we've heard anecdotally from parents, I'm sure you must be hearing the same things just personally and through PTA meetings. Mr. Goodison, I've heard some feedback just about the current schedule and students, I don't know how accurate this is, that the way that services are scheduled, that there could be weeks that a student is missing a class for more than a week. Do you see an improvement with this schedule, or what are concerns in terms of scheduling from a special ed perspective?
Yeah. In those cases, if that was brought to the school's attention by the parent, we would certainly go to PPT, and even in this current schedule, we have ways to change recommendations to increase frequency. But to your direct question, I do see flexibility for a few reasons. One, we have the flex time, which is a possible utilizer of Learning Center. We have, in what I said this last time and I said it this time, we need to be able to offer some services at least every day, depending on the time, because some students need a check-in, some students need Learning Center, and I do see an improvement in some of that flexibility because we still have students who need a true, executive function check-in. Even for 10 minutes, we still have that little bit of time. We have flex. We still have Learning Center periods during the music time if we need those. So every individual PPT can make the determination and the give and take on where we want to schedule those services. And the other big thing is we're dropping less classes. So there would be much less time. And in those cases, likely, I don't want to assume, would be a student who maybe had a one-time Learning Center. So if it dropped that week, that is less of a thing here.
That point is what I wanted you to get on the record.
Yep, got it. That was my big finish.
Well, that was a good one. And, we've talked a lot about children's mental health needs and some of the challenges, and I think that this flex schedule really provides an opportunity to give kids what they need and just to break and to reset. I look forward to you really implementing it with fidelity. That is an impressive list of activities for our students. And I would just ask the chair at some point just to maybe even just get an update on this next year, specifically about how this period is playing out. Because I know it was a concern with one of the earlier versions that came before us, but I think that there is real possibility here. But we're going to hold you accountable into doing what you said in terms of, not being a free-for-all or just having students using these periods to read independently, although I think that at times there's value with just taking a short time to do that in the course of a week. And in terms of the movement, from Ms. Kelly, scheduling that so everybody gets an equal shot at a movement break over the course of a month or whatever the time frame may be. So thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, just want to add to Ms. Tiley's point. I was at, I think it was in the first 2 weeks of my arrival at her school, and I think every child, I guess you can call it organized chaos. They were all intentionally doing something to benefit their own well-being. So I think it's a tribute to the way they've organized it. But I also want to just add, in the traditional 42, 45, however, straight 7-period day, on paper, yes, it's more instructional minutes. In reality, we know in a middle school especially, by the time the kids come in, you settle everyone down, you get into the lesson, you want to check and you want to wrap up the lesson. It is not truly the same number of educational, instructional minutes as it plays out when you just do the math. And anyone that wants to debate that, I'm more than happy to do that at the end of the meeting.
Not looking to debate that. Dr. Hatzis, I don't think he's here, but that was his, remember the chaos of the shortened period, how much is lost. So, hear you. Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing the information, and we'll be sure to follow up. Oh, the mic. Thanks, everybody. Okay, moving on. Old business. Approval of the physics text, College Physics, a Strategic Approach, 4th edition. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the physics text, College Physics, a Strategic Approach, 4th edition. Can I get a motion? Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mrs. Vitale. Any discussion? Okay, take it into the public. Any public comment on approval of this? May come forward at this time. If not, I'll take it back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, approval of Family Consumer Science text on cooking, a textbook of culinary fundamentals. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the Family Consumer Science text on cooking, a textbook of culinary fundamentals. Can I get a motion? Mrs. Gerber, seconded by Mrs. Vitale. Any discussion on this item? No? All right. Any public comment? I thought Mr. Smoller was coming up for the cooking textbook. I was like, no cooking. Okay. All right, take it back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Adoption of policies. Recommend a motion that the Board of Education adopt policies 5141.71, external heat illness, awareness for intramural and interscholastic athletics, 5141.72, emergency action plan for interscholastic and intramural athletic events, and 6146, requirements for graduation. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Asa. Discussion by the board members. This is one motion, you'll notice, with all three policies. Okay, any public comment on any of these three policies for the body? No? All right, take it back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. New business. First reading of policy 6142.101, student nutrition and physical activity. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Thank you. So this is actually a little bit of a delay in getting this policy to you. Again, the past being what it was. This is something that is supposed to be reviewed every 3 years or so, and with under Mr. Goodison's leadership, the committee was assembled. These changes were brought forward. There was nothing really of any particular controversial nature in the policy discussion. It was mostly gaining a better understanding of these changes. I have one hope for request that if anybody does have questions, having looked this over, we do still have Mr. Goodison here, so that if we could call him up if anyone had something immediate, because otherwise I would not be intending to ask him to be present at our next meeting. I would just ask for questions in advance, and I could, if policy is not able to answer them, I would just send them to him. But if there's anything that jumps out at you, we have a resource here to tap into.
Any questions at this time? Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, so with the language about the hydration, I was just curious, so just do we have a sense, do all our schools provide this type of or level of hydration, or is this going to be a budget thing where we're going to have to get hydration stations and water jets, whatever they are?
I had that exact same question, but just so that you hear it from staff, Mr. Goodison, if you wouldn't mind coming up. So this, for everyone, this is on page C, the second red bullet point. And again, the question I had posed to you about what does that mean for our facilities? Are we currently able to meet this?
Yep, I don't have it right in front of me right now, but both from the Rudd Center self-study that we did, there was a recommendation for the federal requirement for language around access to potable water. When we brought that to the Wellness Committee, including principals and teachers, access to the potable water they felt was something that we weren't able to do with our current resources.
We're not able to do.
We are able to do. I believe, and I believe there was no concern about budgetary needs, and I believe those were examples as far as access to potable water.
Okay, so we won't need to be adding additional, this won't have to be added to our facilities plan, I guess is what I'm saying, that we have the ability to provide water.
Correct.
But I guess my question is, so we're not right now, or is this just putting it into writing, something that we always try to, we're already trying to do?
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Asa.
It's page B. The fifth bullet point is this basically saying the teacher can't say drop and give me 20?
That was put in and actually discussed with the Wellness Committee around that all staff, can't use the physical activity as a form of punishment, which comes from the state statute, which was why we put that in there the way to encompass everybody from that.
So this is purely dictated by the state and legislation.
To my understanding, I can double check that for you, but that was the intention behind that when that language was put in.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would have to, I'm trying to look very quickly now, and I don't think I'll be able to find it that quickly. We actually already incorporated that language into a different policy back a year or so ago. I would have to look it up, and
I'm
which
curious.
I begrudgingly added because, again, it's statute-driven, even though I believe there is some latitude for coaches, but they could do things for the health of their players.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. I mean, this says all staff members, including coaches and teachers. I have a real problem with the language here, and I'm curious if I have any footing to stand on to have that problem. But if it's purely state statute and they're saying that it has to be in here, that's one thing. But I don't understand how you can tell a coach that they can't tell a kid that they need to run 5 laps because they're not doing or disrupting practice or whatnot.
I can certainly seek some clarification on that. When we drafted this, a dialogue among the committee was around the school staff, the feedback, and broadening that language out to include recess aides and whatnot, but I can get some clarification on that for the board.
Yeah, I would just, before we vote on this, if I could just make that request, I'd appreciate that information.
Absolutely.
Mr. Peterson.
Just as a quick follow-up and through the chair to Mr. Asa, would it make a difference if this said, instead of discipline, if it said punishment? You're trying to distinguish between punishment and training?
No, as a former coach myself, and sometimes when, I think if you have to distinguish that with a coach, I think there's a broader issue. But I think a coach should have the latitude to make certain requirements of certain athletes if they're not holding up or they're disrupting or they're doing something purposely. And I would never want it to sound like I support punishment, but sometimes some discipline here. So I'm not sure if that wording would help. I guess my question is, does this need to be so broad to include outside of the building, let's say? Because, right, the coaches and the sports are happening, after school, but they're on school property. So that would be the clarification I'm looking for.
I appreciate that point, and I'll get that for you.
Mr. Issa, can I ask a point of clarification? The language is on the prohibition of the use, not in the mandating of the use. So there's a variance in the reading there. So
I have no idea what that means.
okay, so what this says is that you cannot prohibit a student from recess or PE as a form of discipline, meaning they can't be kicked out of PE or not get to do recess as a form of discipline unless the safety, that is statute, I can tell you that, unless there's a safety issue.
That's a separate issue.
That's different from
Which,
this.
then I don't understand what language, are you talking about the one above?
The 5th bullet.
Okay, understood, yep. Okay, gotcha. So the one below you don't have any issue with though there. It's the kind of the converse.
No, it's the take a lap prohibition.
The 6th bullet I'm not bringing up.
For what it's worth, and Mr. Goodison, I don't know if this helps, but I did find the policy. It was policy 5144.4, where we did put in the school employees, may not require the students enrolled to engage in physical activities afforded discipline, but it did say explicitly during the school day, which this does not. And I think that would address exactly what my concern I'd raised in policy and which Mr. Asa is now. If you would be able to confirm which one is required of us, but it's policy 5144 is where we have the other reference to it.
Sure, I can do that.
Ms. Vitale.
Yeah, really just a follow-up. I read this to be more geared towards physical education classes that were happening during the school day and not necessarily behavior of coaches as part of their coaching responsibilities for teams after school. It's just that if a coach happened to be the PE teacher during the day. But
that was the context of our thought in it, but it's a point well taken that we'll look into.
So just thank you, Mr. Ace, for raising that.
So at this point, if there are any other questions prior to our vote next meeting, if you could let me know so that I can, if I'm able to answer it myself, I'll take care of it. But if I do need Mr. Goodison, I just would want to be able to get it to him ahead of the next meeting.
Okay. Next, first reading of policy 6161, instructional resources.
So I'm not sure if anyone's had a chance to look at it. This is just adding a little bit more language regarding what the board will be voting, what this board and future boards would be voting on. And there's a lot more detail as well in the administrative regs in terms of setting up processes and practices for staff to follow as they're looking to get books approved or as there are issues that are being raised, so that it's a very transparent process. But if there are any questions at this time, happy to address.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, I guess just question, what was the impetus behind adding all this additional language?
It was mostly it was staff driven, that it was brought to us by central office that they were looking to know, especially knowing some of the curricula that we have coming up, to look at and wanting to get ahead in terms of being able to set direction for how do these materials get approved, the fact that the board will then own those votes and be able to say, this is board approved textbook, this is board approved material. It has the go-ahead as part of our curriculum review. It'll also, very, very important part of this was the wish of central office, and I think this, may be coming in part from a lot of our discussion on the grading policy in the policy committee, which is regarding consistency. Right now, without language such as this, we have at present very inconsistent practices across many of our classes, and wanting to have those more common experiences as our students progress vertically is a really important part of their education, that we can be assured of people are, I'll give the easy example of English, that people are encountering certain books. The subsequent teacher in a different grade can make reference to those texts as a part of building their understanding of the text, understanding of whatever it is that the focus of that book was. But really there is a great deal of inconsistency, and this was meant to bring that a little bit more in line. So that across the district, across the schools, classes within a single school, it will make a more consistent experience.
I'm just going to raise the point right now. I mean, I think that we had addressed this, but in the, Jen, under supplemental resources are not considered textbooks, so these are kind of the exclusionary items. 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet town summer reading, I believe, and I can go back, but that was not to pertain to required summer reading. So I think it might just be a miss, but remember my memory.
It was part of the discussion. The way, and just in case the board is wondering, Mrs. Jacobson was otherwise occupied at our last policy meeting, so this was Mrs. Guernsey and myself working on this and voting out. We ultimately decided against that. Obviously, that's something which, if the board wants that to be different, in other words, if the Omnivore's Delight is going to be a required reading for AP Biology in the summer, right now that would not be a required board vote. That's in contrast with the summer reading where the students have a tremendous selection of texts, and there's that coming back to school in September day where they have the book talks, et cetera. That's two different types of summer reading, and initially we had considered one would need a board vote and one would not, and ultimately we opted not to have it. So that would include the required summer reading. We decided we moved away from that, but happy to have that discussion.
Mrs. Vitale.
This is really probably for Mr. Testani. I don't know if there's been any discussion. How many paperback books do you foresee us needing to approve? Like for at the high school level,
Well, if I can jump on that for a quick
just some
second.
clarification on that for all of our English classes at our secondary level that is coming before the board, and the level of scrutiny that would be expected by the board to be approving all of these books.
I just want to jump in with one quick thing, because that was part of our policy discussion as well, and we had thought of putting in a sentence to make explicitly clear at the very least that this is a policy we intended to be implemented as the curricula come up. So number one, we're not looking to now occupy the entire agenda for the next few months of needing to approve all of these books. But then when the English curriculum comes up, when the social studies, when business, when science come up, that those texts which fit this description, i.e. the entire course, yes, that would be part of what we're doing. Now, and again, obviously, different board members would handle that discussion differently, but we were looking to make this a transparent process, and then officially to have the board put its approval behind what it is that we are asking our teachers to do and stand by that.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, I guess to kind of piggyback on Mrs. Vitale's question, I think it would be helpful to understand exactly how many books we're talking about here. I mean, I'm not going to have to worry about this, but somebody at this table might, or people in the future may, and it just seems like an awful lot.
I think that will definitely vary by which curriculum we're looking at the moment, and I certainly think, I mean, we do have a curriculum liaison who's working with staff, and that the idea of the process. So, for example, if it was one where there were going to be a tremendous number, I think that it might be something fair to request that maybe that, and again, I'm genuinely just making this up right now, that maybe the board could be apprised a few months in advance of the curriculum presentation. These are the books we're looking at. If someone was looking to, do a perusal of them, to feel good about their vote of, yes, we stand behind this, that this supports the curriculum, where it's a one with greater number. Others, I don't think it would be quite as arduous.
No, and I really, what I'm talking about is English. I mean, I suppose perhaps, high school history, there might be, additional. We're talking about English and just the sheer number of books. If you're talking about secondary, just middle and high school, that just seems like an awful lot.
And I would say that at least in policy, we acknowledged that and didn't ultimately have a problem with it. That if we're going to stand by it, and if we're going to have this expectation of consistency, then that means we want the text reference in the curriculum documents, and that means we are voting on it.
Right, and I totally understand that part. I think I'm not talking about this board sitting at this table right now. I'm just a little concerned, not knowing who may be sitting at this table in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that this could potentially open up the potential for some real micromanagement. And it makes me a little uneasy.
And we had that discussion as well, and that's where the one thing, of course, is that the curriculum is only coming up every approximately 8 to 9 years, so that there is that cushion. This is not something that can capriciously just be brought up unless someone's looking to make changes. I fully acknowledge your point, and that we had quite a bit of discussion of weighing the pros and cons to that very point. But ultimately, the well-intentioned curriculum concerns were what drove our vote.
Mr. Asa, sorry.
Just a follow-up to that. So just to be clear, and to the point that you said, every 8 or 9 years. So in that 8 or 9 year span, does that mean that it would have to come before the board if an English teacher decided that they wanted to introduce a new book into the?
The book only, yes, as a whole class instructional material, that would be the focus of the instruction. Yes, it would.
I can personally, I can see pros and cons to that. My fear, though, is that that may come across as the board getting very deep into the weeds on things, and I would hope that the administration, through regulations and whatnot, would be able to monitor and make sure that a teacher isn't introducing an inappropriate book or something that doesn't align with it. So I will say that I do share the concerns of some of my fellow board members, that because there's such a span of time between these, that it seems a little crazy that every time a teacher wanted to do a book, they'd have to come before the board versus going to the administration or something through some of the regs. So that's just, I'd be interested to have more of that discussion.
And just to be clear, it would never get to the board until it had already gone through administration. Any teacher who would be looking to propose a book, it would already have been vetted, by whoever the program director was, for example.
So that even furthers my point that if we're entrusting them to make those decisions, why are we having to bring it back each and every time?
That's my thinking on that.
Can I follow up with that thought process really quickly, if you don't mind, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly? So just, I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but we are required to approve all textbooks and instructional materials in law. So the policy also is, in addition to what Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, there was confusion about how are those things defined? What is an instructional material? What is a textbook? So that's why you'll also see that list of exclusionary items in here to clarify those things that we would not be approving. So I don't know if that helps anyone understand that we are required actually as a board to approve those things. And I don't know if Mr. Javis-Jancic would like to come up and, provide any clarification. And I'm sorry, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, I just wanted to share my thoughts in terms of why we were actually looking at this in terms of the consistency and also what we are required to be approving and hoping to provide some clarity around that.
Can I just get back, since that was
Yeah,
a follow-up
sorry.
to my question? That actually makes me more confused based on what you just said, because what you just said is that by law, we're supposed to be requiring every book that teachers have kids read.
Textbook
Because
and
it's-
instructional materials,
so
but that's how
is
you...
a paperback book, just clarify, is a paperback book as part of a class considered instructional material?
Depends on how it is being used. If it is for the whole class instruction, then yes.
And my sons get these News for You printouts. That's an instructional material the entire class is using. The board is not approving.
So that is intended to fit, if you turn it over, under the other material which are ancillary to the FPS approved curriculum.
Thank you. Have we run into a problem, to your point about 11th grade teacher referencing a book that you're assuming that a student would have read in freshman year? Has that happened? That students that we are assuming are reading a novel by the time they are graduating from high school just haven't?
I'm happy to jump in, and then Dr. Javis-Jancic, please correct me if anything I have said to this point is incorrect. Simply put, yes, that there it is. Teachers are obviously they are all doing the curriculum. I'm not saying that at all, but they are doing it through a variety of means, which is therefore interfering with assured experiences.
I'm in between policy and whether or not this could be handled just through department heads and meetings on what is everybody working on in terms of that consistency level. But I'll let Dr. Javis-Jancic answer.
I know there's a focus on English right now. It does spread to other departments. English does come up as language arts does come up as the one that is more controversial. If there's a unit, for example, on, and I don't know a text right now, but on a certain text, I would, as you approve that, my assumption would be the board would assume that's being implemented, that unit, and that it shouldn't be changed. And as we've progressed through textbooks not simply being textbooks anymore, programs sometimes get bought that are technically textbooks in a digital format that also need to be taken into consideration. So we did want to look at the policy to make sure that we had definitions specific to what the expectation of the community is and the board is in terms of approval. And to Ms. Jacobson's point of the legislation, that all textbooks do need to be approved within curriculum documents and through policy.
Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey.
I just wanted to add my thoughts on this going through the process, if it's helpful to anyone. I was very concerned about this policy and did feel an obligation to go through this process because of our legal obligations. We spent a lot of time talking about these exceptions, and that's what makes me feel better about this. I would have preferred they be part of administrative regs, but I don't understand how that would be possible legally. And my concern was less about the assured experiences, although I am concerned about them. But in this particular case, I was addressing the concern that was relayed to the policy committee about protecting our teachers, which was important to me. So those were sort of my drivers and where I was coming from. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Thanks. I just want to understand clearly the implications of what policy committee members are saying. Are you saying that under current state law, the board is not fulfilling its obligation with regard to review of instructional materials?
You're the one who said it. I was not. I have not been worried about that. We did broaden the definition of textbook in this. I think we have been fulfilling it. We have been fulfilling certainly the spirit of the law. We have any conventional textbook we have been voting on. But when you consider what the role of a textbook is in the curriculum, which is having a common source material for teachers to rely on for their instruction, for equity across the district that all students will have access to. In fact, we do need to broaden our understanding of textbooks. Some of them are online, some of them are paperback, some of them are other. And so this is now being more specific to what we thought was appropriate. So no, I am not in any way saying that the Board of Education or Fairfield Public Schools has been in violation of state statute.
I'm sorry, I'm not really trying to make an accusation here. I'm trying to understand what the motivation driving policy is, because I certainly understand that the definition of textbook in terms of physical versus digital is something that's changed. But I can't remember any discussion that we've ever had about whether or not we should be teaching the Odyssey in high school English. And it feels like that's the point that we're getting to.
And I think that is part of it. I know that I was on the board with Mrs. Gerber when we did the last English curriculum, and we had a fairly lengthy, heated discussion, passionate discussion about, for example, representative canon in the curriculum. And there were definitely staff members who were not in favor of that. The board was. And the board wanted and expected that in the curriculum. And there was a lot of time spent, I'm just giving that as one example, of where without vesting our vote, without putting our vote, without putting that supervision over the curriculum, we have what we have now, which is very few assured content experiences. Again, they are fulfilling the curriculum, they are getting the skills work. They are not having the exposure to a consistent content at present. And I think that, again, given what we're also doing with science of reading in elementary school, I think is an absolutely appropriate discussion to be having and a policy to be considering.
And I'll just follow up by saying I'm beginning to appreciate the enormity of what this policy is going to imply. I do understand what you're saying. You and I, frankly, have had a lot of conversations about the canon, so I understand that entirely. I'm going to have to give this a lot of thought. I also want to say for the record that I am pro-Odyssey.
Over the Iliad?
No.
Mrs. Christie, Mrs. Kelly.
Just real quick, and switching gears from language arts, so I don't know if anybody still had questions about that. But and this, I fully admit my ignorance is showing here, but when we talk about curriculum review, does PE fall on that schedule for review? So when you say things like equipment, like if you're reviewing, like, I just didn't know if that, like, we need to buy new treadmills because we don't have treadmills. Like, is that something that comes here too, or is that a capital expense? I don't know. So, like, I just didn't know if this is all encompassing.
No, we did have a lot of discussion about what exactly is meant by instructional materials, so I certainly respect the question. But no, this was up in the heading of the related to textbooks and workbooks was the idea there. For some reason, that's a common heading that runs across, I think it might have been, Mrs. Guernsey and I were looking, I think across 3 different policies have that as a heading, and then it's the third line that differentiates among them, but I'd have to look that up to check. Regardless, okay. I'm not a fan of the head of this, of the name of this policy.
It's fine. I was just more curious, making sure that we were talking about, like, PE is in the mix here.
Mrs. Gerber.
And I don't want to belabor the point. I'm just going to just flip back to the English for a second. I guess, again, just to reiterate, not talking about the people sitting at this table, but as Mr. Peterson stated, this is a very large, weighty policy here that could really be setting some precedents that perhaps with different board members, this could be very problematic. And I just am concerned about where this might go, just in terms of specific, again, go back to English. I was an English major. That's, something that I feel very strongly about, and I just worry that this could open the door to issues down the road.
And I'm not denigrating that concern. I think flipping that to the positive, I'd wanted to view this, and that's what Mrs. Guernsey alluded to, was, and it is the current board, but it's a form of staff protection as well. This idea of the board stands behind this, and I recognize we can't speak to a future board. And I understand that. However, I would argue that the benefits of this far outweigh the costs of going down a dystopian path.
Right, and I'm sorry, just to follow up, I think what concerns me is that, we have a board right now, we have a high school English teacher, we have other people on this board who know the Iliad and the Odyssey and have strong opinions about things like that. And I think your assumption is that the board would approve things that's then standing by the staff. What happens when we have board members who do not go along with the staff recommendations and perhaps do not have background as an English teacher, as an English major, as somebody who works writing, and just doesn't like a title, and so they're actually going to be going against what the staff has to say. So it's all well and good if the board ends up approving what the staff is bringing to the board, but what happens when the board does not agree with the staff and is then taking away the staff who are our paid professionals who do this for a living? And if we don't always have an English teacher on our board, we might not have any teachers on this board at some point, and they're going to be telling teachers who do this for a living that they disagree with what has been brought to them. And so they're not going to be standing by the teachers, they're going to be going against the teachers. And that is my concern, just being devil's advocate.
So conversely, I would say, one, sometimes not all titles that are brought forward might be appropriate. There is that possibility. My hope would be that the processes and that the administrative regs are putting into place will have that staff conversation well in advance before it ever gets to the board level. That said, I can't say anything about your concern. We know it exists out there, primarily in other states, and we have seen far less of it here. What I know right now is we have tremendous inconsistent practice, and it has been in place for decades, and we as a board have an opportunity to change that for the betterment of our students, and I think it would be a shame to not pursue that because it does impact the education of our students, to not have this, the weight of policy behind this idea of a consistent practice.
You brought up dystopian. I just made me think of a high school English class where students were given four books, choose one, just utopia, dystopia. The whole class wasn't necessarily reading those books. Would that be considered those 4 books that we need to, like that sort of choice when you're teaching not necessarily the Odyssey, but you're teaching themes, and there are many very good resources out there that part of the class could be reading, not the full class,
right,
but part of the class. So how would this policy apply to that situation?
Right now, those would be part of what the board would be approving. That would be a learning group. So having those options. Some things that would not be, for example, would be things like, well, again, the example of certain excerpts that are brought in. We hear all the time from our staff regarding, especially social studies, business, things happening of the moment. Well, those are articles that are brought in support of the curriculum. Those would be ancillary to the curriculum. Books that would not be approved were if you are having AP Bio and the teacher's asking you to get the AP Bio, what are they called? Not the
test preps.
The test preps. So, that would be something that's ancillary, that's in support of the curriculum. It would not be coming before the board. Again, we opted to move away from the summer reading. Let the teachers, because that's constantly being flexed. This went well this year, this didn't. We weren't looking to get into that. That was a longer answer than what you set out for, sorry.
Mrs. Gerber.
Sorry, one more. Perhaps it might be helpful. I know you said that I guess some of this was driven by staff concerns.
This policy did not start with the policy committee members.
Right, by staff, do you mean teachers, or do you mean administrators, central office?
Leadership.
Central office leadership.
I don't know that it's
School
not with principal as well. I'm
Okay.
so
Well, I guess
school
it just
and
might be helpful, perhaps, if there's some way to make sure that teachers are aware of this, just to kind of get a better sense of where they stand on it. And obviously, I realize that there's not going to be one specific answer that we're going to get, but, since this will be impacting them, some more than others, it might be helpful for them to understand what's at stake. And they could find it comforting, or they could find it troubling, or neither, or both. I don't know.
Mrs. Guernsey?
I just wanted to add, because this is like a really emotional topic actually for me, and what I felt like I was tasked with here was the definition of a textbook. So if in fact this board feels that these English reading books are not textbooks, that's something we could build in or change here. I mean, I'm just offering this as an exercise. So, if there's something specific, because right now, our definition of a textbook is not really clear, and we're just thinking of basically those hardcover physics books, right? So this was a many months long attempt to address what really is a textbook. But I think that, specific feedback about that definition could be really helpful. Because again, it was the three of us in a room, and I would be open to hearing and understanding more about that. Thank you.
If I could just also add, we as staff also want to be clear when we bring a curriculum document forward to you in the future that your expectations are also met in terms of what is within that document, what you expect of it, in that what is approved as a curriculum of the district as well.
Mrs. Vitale?
And I do appreciate that if we're going to be teaching U.S. history, that there's certain common sense, that there's certain texts that we want to make sure that everybody is reading potentially to support that curriculum. And including that in the curriculum document makes sense. And I agree for English as well. If there are certain books that that everybody should be reading, to include that in the curriculum document, I could see that also making sense. I share a lot of the concerns that Mrs. Gerber said. I'm going to have to think about this policy. I appreciate the policy committee's work on this and responding to staff concerns and, wanting to make sure that we're adhering to the law and protecting our students and providing consistency across all of our classes. So please don't take the concerns shared tonight as anything but just trying to learn more. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else on those, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the following February 13, 2023 BOE regular meeting minutes, February 28, 2023 BOE special meeting minutes. Can I get a motion? Mrs. Gerber, seconded by Mrs. Vitale. Any discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay. I'll say, all right, all in favor, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Peterson. All abstentions? Mrs. Kelly, abstentions. Motion passes 810, sorry. 701. Sorry, Mrs. Vitale. Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Excuse me. I just wanted to give a brief update with where we're at with the double accelerated math. We did meet with parents last month to go over some of the possible options for next school year for the current students that are in fourth grade that will be rising fifth graders. We also provided them with a survey to ask for their preference on two of the options that were discussed, and they left the meeting with to think about and resonate with them. We will be having a follow-up meeting with those families next week to nail down what the final decision will be, or the final recommendation to bring to the board as to what we'll do for next year. We've also been working with now two neighboring towns, one of which does an enrichment and acceleration with elementary students, and they do it in a couple of different ways to be able to do it in each school, and that's done through a couple of data gathering points, and so that's something we will consider as we start to plan for the future. We also have had conversations with another neighboring town that's in the planning process as well, that plan to implement in 25-26. So right now there is no plan for next school year for any additional students. We are looking at some data, though, to see what the potential could be, because we're not really sure if we're talking about 60 kids or 15 kids, and where those kids may lie, and how we could possibly reallocate staff. We've been working extremely hard to assess the utilization of certain staff members and to see how we can be more effective and efficient in delivering services directly to students with the current staff that we have.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Just one quick question. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. So that's dealing with our current fourth graders who are in the fifth grade classrooms and what we're doing for them. Where are we in the discussion for the current third graders?
We right now are still identifying if there are, but we're looking to plan for a future program and not necessarily make a decision yet for next school year with current third graders, because we don't know what we're looking at right now. But there is an overall consensus that there is a way to double accelerate these kids without starting in the current or the rising fourth graders.
Is there a chance that the rising fourth graders will not have the opportunity that the current fourth graders do?
There could be. We're hopeful that we can do something. But again, we've had a lot of robust conversation, including today, around what the outcomes are. And right now, all the students, regardless if we went back to the old model that didn't include a math academy, end up in the same place that they would normally end up in the double acceleration that we currently offer. The culminating math class is the culminating math class. And they all get there in one way, shape, or form. We're just now really, in essence, identifying students that are better at computation in third grade than the other kids. I'm not so sure that what we did previously just was less stressful on mostly parents, I think, in terms of making sure that their students are being identified and being challenged. And I think we had the conversation today that the ability to challenge these students within the course of the regular school day can be possible. And how to do that, I think, may be our first strategy as we look to plan and see how this can be part of it, maybe our gifted program as we revamp it.
Okay, so obviously no one's here to speak more to it. I'll just put out there that I would need to hear a really long argument, or not long, nuanced argument for returning to the status quo of nothing. And for example, I don't want to hear how we're going to differentiate for those third graders. You know, I know my argument all along has been you can't. A student who can do, 3-digit multiplication in a grade where everyone else is lucky to do 2-digit addition, you can't differentiate for that. And so I had hoped, but again, I'm open to whatever. Math is not my field, but I had hoped at the very least, although I shared Mrs. Guernsey's concern about the use of the summer, we did come up with a way this past year to accelerate for these children. And unless, but you may have spoken to the parents and maybe they say that it wasn't worth it. My child is just as bored as ever with fifth graders than as with the fourth grade peers. But if they're positive that their child has been more engaged in school due to what we did last year, I would hope, and again, obviously we're looking at new math leadership, so I respect that decision that we may not want to try something brand new right now when we're going to have new leadership in there, but then I would hope at the very least we could replicate what we did last year as a holding pattern, while your vision of, you know, these other districts you're looking at, or the gifted and talented, or however we do that, totally respect that. But I would hope we wouldn't just revert to something that left an awful lot of kids bored. That was a long way of saying that final statement.
No, and I hear you. We did, in the meeting with families, hear a few comments regarding that they're still bored. And we also heard that if we did nothing else next year, in terms of when we gave out some of the options, there was a couple of parents that just said they would, as long as we can do something for them. A lot of them are seeking out other opportunities to challenge their kids outside of school as they would at any other place. But we're hopeful that we can develop a program to enrich these students and double accelerate them, utilizing the current staff that we have, but really just trying to shift some of the roles and responsibilities going forward. And how other districts are identifying them, I do think the current district, in which you're familiar with, I like the way they identify students to make sure that there's enough students in every building that have an opportunity with support to be challenged.
Mrs. Kelly.
Hi. I would just add that I know math leadership is in transition, but before I would feel comfortable, you know, implementing anything for possible 4th or 5th graders for next year, I think it would be helpful to hear from someone in a math leadership role to present on what the benefits are of accelerating math in 4th and 5th grades, because I don't think that's ever been presented to us as far as leadership actually supporting that idea. So if we could get that, and then it would make more sense in my mind, because I know that I'm trying to keep an open mind about this. I don't want to say we're not doing anything, even though I've probably said that 600 times. And I want to keep an open mind about it, but I would feel more comfortable in that pursuit if we could hear from someone who was much more qualified than any of us sitting at this table to really speak to the benefits of accelerating math at 4th and 5th grade, other than it alleviates boredom. That is something that would really help me try to overcome some of my hurdles.
Okay, well, I can say, based on the discussions around the table, I'm not sure if you're going to have someone that's going to sit here and advocate to all the benefits, but more than happy to have someone come and answer any of the questions. It just doesn't seem to me that even in that, those individuals are advocating for a double acceleration that soon, when the pathway is clearly established in 6th grade when they enter middle school. But to your point, it does lend to the boredom. That's what we're talking about.
Anything else?
You may or may not be aware, since our last board meeting, we did have one of our principals at the elementary level announce a retirement. So we will begin the search process, and it has begun already through the posting of a new elementary school principal at North Stratfield School. So congratulations to Ms. Jackson on the decision for her to enter the next phase of her life. So I just want to acknowledge and really give a lot of credit to our staff, but also all our 5th graders across the district who participated in Connecticut's Invention Convention as part of the STEAM program. If you all, I know some of you were judges, thank you very much for taking the time to do that. There was some incredible projects that were developed by our 5th grade students. I was quite impressed, and just the pride and the joy that they were able to present, answer questions, and I know there were some students that will be moving on to the next phase at the state level. So congratulations to all those students, and especially the staff that worked extremely hard to get those projects coordinated and displayed. Tonight was the town music concert. I did have an opportunity prior to the basketball game last night to stop at Ward, see over 500 students practicing and participating tonight. It was absolutely amazing. I'm sure the concert was a joy to be at, and sorry we missed it. Last week, we did meet PTA DEI representatives at Ludlow Middle to discuss the important work that's going to be happening in the district. I'm looking forward to collaborating with the parents and the group that is part of the committee. I also want to thank Ms. Guernsey and Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly for taking the time to stop by and support that work. On Monday, February 27th, I attended a Black History Month celebration at Walter Fitzgerald campus, where guests of honor shared inspirational stories, advice, and life lessons and experience with the students there. I thought the speakers really hit home to many of our students, where they were able to share their experiences, how they were able to overcome obstacles to be successful. And I think it really resonated with our students. They shared a meal together at the end. Were able to answer questions. I think some of these folks will be coming back to act in a mentor capacity with our students at the Walter Fitzgerald campus, so I'm excited for that. Met some really super students that were anxious to share some of their stories. Real prideful in the multicultural feast that was planned by the students, and to discuss the foods of their culture. So it was a great experience there. I want to really give a big shout out and a thank you to Rachel Chapa, our Director of Communications. As you can see, there's been a huge increase through our communications department in getting information out to families and to the community. If you didn't get a chance, he did upload a new video on our website that really is starting to take shape. She's looking to work collaboratively with staff to make sure that the website is brought up to a higher standard. Not that it's not a good website, but she has some great ideas, and as you can see it transform, it's going to be much more user-friendly to the public. So thank you to Rachel and all her hard work. It was mentioned already, but I did want to give a shout out and a big mention to the Ludlow mock trial team for advancing to the state finals, which will be held next week at the Connecticut Supreme Court. It'll be judged by 3 justices in a case on voter fraud. So it's very relevant to current events. This is a huge honor, and I'm very proud of the students and the teachers that were able to help guide them through the process. So look forward. I believe the mock trial final is March 23rd. I'll confirm and get an email out. It is open to the public if anyone wants to take a ride up to Hartford. Just want to congratulate the Ward DECA team on earning honors at the State Career Development Conference on March 1st. This is a huge accomplishment for the first year of the DECA program at Fairfield Ward High School. Just want to recognize last week was National Social Worker Week. Social workers, as we all know, play a crucial role in making our schools welcoming, safe, and nurturing place to learn while helping students process emotions, feelings, and stress. Post-pandemic, we all know the challenges that many of our students are facing and the important work that our social workers do each and every day to support them as they work through these challenges so they can concentrate on being productive learners in our school environment. So thank you to our social workers. We also celebrated Social Emotional Learning Day on March 10th. A variety of activities were occurring across the district. There was a great activity over at the ECC and at Tomlinson. Hosted an event through the Counseling Center where students and staff filled out kindness Post-it notes for one another and just shared those. So we're doing a lot of work, as was mentioned in the middle school presentation around social emotional learning. We are looking at some programs that many of the folks on the committee at the district level were impressed with, are gathering more information, have been able to play around through some access by the vendor to be able to, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, to provide grade appropriate and developmentally appropriate social emotional instruction and lead discussion so that all students have access to a rigorous social emotional learning curriculum. And again, tomorrow night, we'll see our boys in action at West Hill High School. I know somebody mentioned Trumbull High to gain a berth in the state final at Mohegan Sun this weekend. Hopefully we have a doubleheader, boys and girls, Ward and Ludlow, to everyone get up and take a ride up to the Mohegan Sun to cheer on our boys and girls basketball teams. Thank you. Any questions? I see
Mrs. Mexican.
I didn't know if we were going to hear about the budget adjustments.
Well, right now, given the numbers, the preliminary numbers that we received from the state that are more in line with where we're going to land, we should be able to absorb the reduction that was recommended, so no cuts from the original proposed budget need to be made at this time. If that changes, which we don't anticipate, we will be looking at some areas in facilities and possibly IT to help cover the costs of the reduction that was provided by the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know, unfortunately, the state education commissioner had to cancel her visit to Fairfield. Just curious if you've heard anything since then as to when there may be a future date if she can make it down here?
Yes, we will definitely have a future date. We're trying to work around whether it will be the week before the April break or the week directly after the April break. But her and I spoke the other day. Unfortunately, because of her being asked to testify at the Education Committee meeting that was scheduled the same day, she regretfully had to postpone. But we will be setting a date, working with Anne Marie, for either the week before the break or, again, after the break. She will be coming down. There may be a visit from the governor as well.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Guernsey?
Given the interest that our community has in the redistricting process, do you have any updates about any communication you've had with SLAM or might have in terms of where they are in the process and if they're still on schedule?
Don't know if they're going to be on schedule. They did start preliminary work even prior to the purchase order being issued, making sure that has been issued. I believe his name is Mike. Mike was on vacation for a week, but he is back and they're working, and we are supposed to get an update from them, Angeles and I, either by the end of this week.
Thank you. Committee and liaison reports. Ms. Vitale?
Fairfield Cares is meeting tomorrow morning, 8:30 in this room, also via Zoom. The agenda is posted on the town website. One of the highlight agenda item is discussing youth services in town. Fairfield Cares was also present at the Chamber of Commerce's Health and Fitness Expo this weekend. We had about 100 people come and stop and sign the pledge to promote stopping our children underage drinking. A lot of good conversations, met a lot of peers that provide services to our kids. So encourage anybody who wants to learn more to check out the Fairfield Cares website or to join the meeting tomorrow. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, several things. I'll start with Board of Finance. We presented our board's budget to the Board of Finance on the 9th. I think Ms. Jacobson was there with me, as was Mr. Testani and several members of the administration. I think it was very well received. They really enjoyed the presentation, so that has gone over well both with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance now, so kudos on that. There will be obviously more discussion about that. The public Saturday session is going to be on the 25th at Ludlow at 9:30, as it has for many years. The final vote, I believe, is still scheduled for the 30th, March 30th. Going backward to, the Finance Committee met on the 1st. We actually had a lot of big discussions. We got some updates on the budget. We heard that the RFP for health insurance has gone out, and I believe the RFP for food service was scheduled to go out yesterday, if my notes are correct. We also had, thanks to Ms. Kelly, wide-ranging and what I thought was very deep discussion about subutilization, which was a topic that came up during the budget season. We provided some additional numbers by the administration. We really, in terms of trying to find out what the cost is of our current operational mode versus going through a staffing service. So just providing fuel for further discussions on that as we go forward.
Mr. Asa.
Yep. The Facilities Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 2:30, and the agenda is posted. It is mostly focused on facility utilization and rentals, so that work is continuing there.
Mrs. Gerber.
I unfortunately was unable to make the most recent PTA council meeting because it was tonight, but did just want to share, not so much for everyone at this table because I'm assuming your plates are kind of full, but just for the public who may be watching, PTA Council is in the process of looking for new executive board members and committee chair positions. So anyone watching or anyone here at the table who knows of anyone who might be interested in stepping up or learning more, they should reach out to Katie Flynn, PTA Council President.
As for myself, keeping very busy watching the legislative session. There's a very large public hearing tomorrow on a lot of bills. I've shared it with the board, and also keeping in touch with any staff members in terms of any potential impacts. So that is an ongoing conversation in terms of what I'm engaged with the legislature at this time. Any other liaison or committee updates? Okay. Open board comment. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
I am very excited to give my annual good luck to the Fairfield Odyssey of the Mind teams, which compete this Saturday. This year, the schools that were able to pull together teams are from Burr, Mill Hill, Fairfield Ward, and there is a Fairfield homeschool team. So I'm not sure where they're all pulling from, but so I just want to wish them an enthusiastic good luck for this Saturday. And for anyone out there who has ever thought they might be interested in Odyssey of the Mind, going to the competition can be a very interesting, entertaining, and fun experience. I'd certainly encourage you, and I will certainly be happy to report to the board how our teams do.
Well, good luck to all of those teams. Anything else? Any other, Mrs. Vitale?
Last week, the Fairfield Unified Sports Team at the high school had its tournament, the Jack Title basketball tournament, which was great. We had schools from across Fairfield County come down. We hosted them, and it was just a great time. So I want to thank all the staff and Coach Schultz for supporting that effort. It was nice to be the host and have kids have so much fun. And they might be playing on between the games up at Mohegan Sun this weekend, so stay tuned.
3 teams. Awesome. All right. Okay. Adjournment recommended. Oh, sorry. What? Oh, sorry.
Hi, everybody. Katie Flynn, 204 Grandview Road. As PTA Council President, I am happy to share the following budget statement. The PTA Council of Fairfield supports the Fairfield Public Schools operating budget for the 2023-24 school year as approved by the Fairfield Board of Education. We strongly encourage Fairfield's other town bodies to support and pass this budget as well. Having our schools' operating budget fully funded is vital to the success of Fairfield Public Schools students, staff, and our community as a whole. Anecdotally, I just want to pass on the tremendous appreciation of the PTA leaders for all of your work, both the Board of Education and the staff. And then just personally, because of the announcement, I want to give a tremendous thank you to Debbie Jackson. I've had the privilege of being PTA leadership at North Stratfield for 6 years, 2 weeks into my kindergartner's run there. And she has been a tremendous partner and leader and through a very difficult time. So just a tremendous shout out to her. So thank you all.
Any other public comment? All right. Adjournment recommended motion that the Board of Education, sorry, let me start that again, that the regular meeting of the Board of Education adjourn. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Peterson, all in favor. Motion passes unanimously. Good night, everyone. Thank you.